You join us here in the first action phase of the Clanker Cup. So unfortunately I forgot to press record, so we missed the first action phase. On the left we have Lewis, the organiser of the event, and on the right we have myself. I'm playing Towson Red Force, and Lewis is playing Ahsoka Legends of the Force Red Force. So turn 1, Lewis unfortunately didn't have a turn 1 play, so I had to just claim. I had a secretive sage, so I play that out. When we go into action phase 2, Lewis plays a Jedi in hiding. I forget that it has hidden, and I go to attack it. Unfortunately I cannot, so I just go 2 to base and gain the force. I followed that out with a Atreus Acolyte. Unfortunately I didn't have anything to fill out the curve, so I left 1 resource on the table, but I knew later on I'd be able to get a bit of an advantage, so I wasn't too upset about this. So going into the 4 resource turn, I'm holding a Towson's Assassin, which is arguably one of the most busted commons for a commons only environment. The Clanker Cup itself is quite an interesting format. It is purely commons only. No rares, no uncommons, no nothing. That includes leaders as well, so hand 1 off the table. So it was a very interesting environment to try and build the deck for, because you didn't really have a meta game to play off of. It just was look at the list of all the commons and see if you can figure out which ones are the best ones. So yeah, here we go. We got a heirloom lightsaber from Lewis onto his Jedi in hiding. I then use my Towson's Assassin to give it -3/-3. This then opens it up to be attacked by one of my final standing units just to take it out. So whilst it's still alive, Lewis takes the opportunity to swing, gain the force, deals 2 damage to my base and heals 1. And then of course the Secretive Sage comes in and cleans it up. I lose the shield. Lewis doesn't trigger his when defeated and plays a Jedi Starfighter out in space. Atreus Acolyte then comes in, gains 2 to base, and I gain the force again. Here we go into the 5 resource turn. So it is a flip for the Towson leader, but not the Ahsoka leader. I did not know that. In my head, Ahsoka was a 5 flip leader. So for those not familiar, Ahsoka is a 6 deploy 5/6 unit that on attack has the same ability as her leader side, so she is able to use the force and make a unit sentinel for the phase, whereas when she's out, it's just on attack, choose a unit, it gains sentinel. So predominantly, I know going into this that if I can keep his ground units clean, his only choice is going to be to make Ahsoka a leader, a sentinel, at which point I've been holding a dogmatic shock squad from the start of the game just to at least slow him down a bit. So yeah, we go into this 5 resource turn with a fair board advantage for the Towson player, with 1 power in space, which is I'm not too worried about. So we have Lewis here. He's a very good player in our local area, likes a strange brew. So putting together this Clanker Cup was a big thing for him. So here we see an itinerant warrior coming down, yet another amazing common that is just so overpowered in comparison to some of the other stuff. So yeah, here we see Lewis saying these are the 2 most busted commons he could think of. So itinerant warrior comes down, uses the force, heals 3 damage from his base back down to 0. Towson's Assassin comes in, swings 4 to base, and that is retaliated with the Jedi Starfighter. So I pay 4 here for another Towson's Assassin, giving -3/-3 to the itinerant warrior. That sets me up perfectly for my Towson to just swing to base and kill this itinerant warrior. So all of my little units are just going to swing into base here. So we get another few points of damage on base. We go up to, I think, 11 damage on base. Plays 3. We're both on 28 HP here because we're both the Red Force bases. And we go here into the 6 resource turn. So as you see in my hand, I have a Thralls of the Coven, a Fleet Interdictor, and some other big things. So I think the Thralls of the Coven is a very, very good card. It's very well statted for the price point. It's 5 cost, 3/7 with raid 3. So it's effectively a 6/7 on swing. The only downside for this deck is it does not have the force trait. But when you're getting to those later stages of the game, unless you've got things like Towson's Assassin, you're not really needing the force other than to get your -1s off of the Towson leader. So yeah, we're going into Ahsoka's flip turn here. So not just the option of deploying Ahsoka, there could be some plot options. So things like sudden ferocity is a common. So here we see an open fire from Lewis to kill one of my Talzin's assassin. This is very much just a damage mitigation because I'm so ahead on board here. I could pump in a hell of a lot of damage if it's not answered. So at least with this, he deals 4 damage to it, kills that. Ahsoka deploys. In his head, he was able to swing with Ahsoka, make it Sentinel, and then absorb a few more swings from my Tide. But as I say, I have that dogmatic shot squad, the 4/6 Sentinel comes out and stands in the way. It's not quite an even trade for Ahsoka, as it only does 4 damage to her 6 health. But here we get an Ahsoka's lightsaber, a Padawan lightsaber from set 3, I believe it is. Whilst not printed as a common, in the OP packs it was printed as common, so it was classed as fair game for this. That does not mean that all starter cards are equal, so that the spotlight cards from sets 4 to 6 are not legal, whereas the starter cards are. So yeah, we see the Padawan lightsaber come down. That allows Lewis to attack straight away with Ahsoka, so he swings into the dogmatic shock squad, which trades equally, but at the same time, that only leaves 2 health left on the Ahsoka leader, so the Atreus Acolyte comes in and cleans that up. We get another damage to base from the Jedi Starfighter. Talzin's Assassin, and likely Talzin will come in here. I'm leaving Talzin up just for those final 2 resources to see if he plays something small, but he doesn't, so we take him up to 20 damage on base, just 8 remaining. So one of the cards picked up there for me was a Whirlwind of Power. That is 3 cost, -2/-2 to a unit, but if you control a Force unit, give it -3/-3 instead. That is some premium removal for this environment. There's very little removal in terms of this commons on the environment. Another quite big one is Merciless Contest, which allows you to defeat a friendly unit and an enemy unit, but each player chooses their own. Which isn't as ideal, but it's as close as you're going to get to a Power of the Dark Side in this environment. So you see here, I've made it up to 7 resources, and we're going to tap out here for a Fleet Interdictor. It's not the best stats for a 7 cost, but it is a big space unit with an immediate board impact that can slow down your opponent. So here we see the first use of Ahsoka's leader side. So the Night Sister Warrior was played from Lewis. I then didn't kill it straight away, or didn't swing to base straight away, so he was able to use the Force and make it a Sentinel. So now I use my Secretive Sage, that comes in, kills the Night Sister Warrior, Lewis draws a card, but he has an empty ground arena. Here's another one. From the Twilight starter decks, we have an Anakin Skywalker, the 6/6, with Coordinate, draw a card on attack. So at this stage, I'm not too worried about it, because I know that if I pump a little bit more damage out, I've got the game, because we take him up to 27 here, so no matter what happens, I've locked it down. I don't need to deal with that Anakin. So yeah, as we go into the 8 resource turn, it's up to Lewis here. I don't believe any card that can win out in this situation, and here we go. So Lewis scoops it up, and that's game 1. It's an interesting game, definitely not ideal for Lewis starting with no turn 1 play. It meant that he was on the back foot, and my game plan anyway is to deal with your unit whilst also building a board for myself, and if I don't have to take a turn to deal with the unit to build the board, I'm pretty happy. So we go here to sideboarding. I'm debating heavily on what to bring in. I've got a couple of answers for space. The sideboard is predominantly space based, so you've got some things like Rivals Fall, Direct Hit, Let's Call It War, just extra removal options. Instead here, I think we're going to go slightly later in the game, so I'm going to side in an extra copy of Cargo Juggernaut. It's a 6 cost 4/6 shielded, but when it comes in, if you control another blue unit, you heal 4 damage from your base, which in a grindy matchup, that could be huge. There's already 2 in the main deck, but I just fancy 3. And the card I take out there is a Defense Fleet TIE Fighter, I believe it's called. Or the Supremacy TIE, sorry. Which is just a 3 cost, 3/3 Space Sentinel. I'm not expecting to see too much space here from Lewis, as he's another force deck. So I'm happy to focus pretty much solely on the ground and just hope. So the eventual metagame for this event turned out to be quite interesting. We had 7 players, and 3 of them were on Grand Moff Tarkin Blue. So set 1 Tarkin, the one that gives an experience token to Imperial units. Seemingly the overriding theory between a few players was that making a massive unit in a format that has very little removal is potentially quite good. So we played 4 rounds, so a little bit more than your typical 8-player event, but just because we felt like playing a bit more. But that meant that this match that you're seeing here was my only match not against a Tarkin. So I played 3 Tarkins and 1 Ahsoka that day. We also had a Vader for yellow and a Quinlan red 30 that was running around as well. I can't remember what the last deck was, but it turned out to be a really fun day organised by Lewis here at the game shop in Aldershot. It's definitely a format that we as a community are looking to bring forward more because it is a hell of a lot of fun. Another consideration would be to include the uncommons in this as well, as there's some really high powered uncommons. But yeah, we highly encourage that you go away and try some formats like this. I'll post some of the deck lists that I can in the comments of the in the description of this video. So if you don't fancy building one, you can take ours for a spin. And because they're commons only, it's super easy and super cheap to build these decks. And as you can see, they're still pretty powerful. Yeah, we're shuffling up here for game 2. Lewis was going to start with the initiative because he lost game 1. And we're going to hope and pray that he has a turn 1 play this time, so he can develop a bit of a board and this can be a bit more fair of a fight. Here we go. We got opening hand for myself. We'll have a look what we've got. So yeah, in hand we have a Cargo Juggernaut, we have a Thralls of the Coven, we have an Acolyte of the Beyond, and we have a Towson's Assassin at least. Just seeing the Towson's Assassin makes me want to keep this hand. We have a Nimble Prowess in there as well, so it's a real debate on what to put down. I've got at least 1 turn 1 play that has the Force trait, so I'm pretty happy. And then I've got a turn 3 play as well, but I don't believe I have another 3 resource play. So I'm hoping to draw into that. So we see a Secretive Sage there from Lewis. So he puts down the shielded 2/2. I have an Acolyte of the Beyond. Not quite as good as a 2/2 shielded, however, it has the 3 health and the Force, not quite the Force trait, but will gain me the Force anyway, to hopefully do some trading here and surviving. I'm debating here what's a resource. I end up putting a Rivals Fall down. I only have 1 in the main deck, and I did not sideboard in my second one. So by putting that down, I am making the decision early on that I do not need that Rivals Fall, and we'll see if that comes back to bite me. So here we go, we have the Secretive Sage swinging 2 to base and gaining the Force for Lewis. I know if I don't swing here with whatever, if I want to swing to base, I can't, because he will then potentially be able to make it a Sentinel. So that is not what we see here. Instead, we play a Blue Squadron X-Wing that deals 2 damage to itself and allows Lewis to draw a card. So at the moment, I'm not able to trade the Secretive Sage, so I have the choice of swinging into it to remove the shield or just getting 3 damage into base. So I go for the 3 damage to base. That at least gains me the Force, but unfortunately I did not draw into much of an efficient play that turn, so that 1 cost Nimble Prowess was all I had. At least going into this turn, I now have the Force and I have a Towson's Assassin in hand, so one of these units will get dealt with. There's the argument for dealing with the space unit because I don't have much answers up there, but if I deal with the ground unit, it will deal with it in 1 action as opposed to having to mess around, removing shield, doing -1s, all sorts of things. But in the same vein, it will also potentially depend on what else Lewis has this turn for me to answer. So we get the swing in here from the Defense Fleet X-Wing. That takes us up to 5. I play the Towson's Assassin straight up. I choose the Secretive Sage here because that then turns off his force gaining, and also it is the unit that hasn't swung. It would save me a bit more damage on base than it would the space unit, and if I see another Whirlwind of Power or a Talon's Assassin, I know I can deal with that space unit. Here we see a what is it? It's the Legends card that 3/2, if you have the initiative when played, deal 2 damage to a unit. So he chooses my unit here, which effectively says to me, if you want to trade units, it has to be an even trade. You're not getting value out of this. And I believe I take that trade because me having a Talon's Assassin versus him having no ground units makes me feel a lot better, especially going into my flip turn here. I know that I'm going to get at least 1 unit for free here. So here, the draw for this turn, I can see I got a Thralls of the Coven and a Devastating Gunship. I think the Devastating Gunship here is quite good because that deals with the space unit and then leaves me with a unit that if he plays another space unit was just going to give me grit on that unit and be able to start chunking big bits to base. So yeah, we get the Blue Squadron X-Wing coming in here, 3 to base. I go up to 8 damage on base. I think only 3 on Lewis's base here. So I am behind in the race, but looking to stabilize. So Talon comes out to threaten whatever's played. Here we get an Anakin out on board. So something that I missed here was if I'd have used Talon's ability to -1 the X-Wing, I would have been able to deal with both units here because I have the Talon's Assassin on board who can deal 4 damage to the Anakin, which leaves him with 2 remaining. So the Devastating Gunship could come down and deal with the Anakin. And if not, I could have just swung the Talon to base, given the extra -1/-1 to the space unit, and then both units on board would have been cleared and my Talon would be undamaged. So here we have the Devastating Gunship instead comes down, deals with the Anakin to keep my Talon's Assassin healthy. But alas, it leaves that X-Wing alive. It's these little sequencing things that I'm not much of a Talon player myself, but going into rotation, it's definitely a consideration. So here is another potential mistake here from me on my resourcing. I put down the defense, the 3/3 Space Sentinel, which if for some reason Lewis here decides to go heavy space, I now don't have many more answers in space. So that Devastating Gunship is threatening the X-Wing, but he's going to at least get a swing in with it first, take me up to 11. I believe I'm going to take the trade here with the Devastating Gunship. Yeah. So whilst this does look quite good, I now have a 6-power space unit. It is tapped and I have no answer for any other space unit. So here we get Ahsoka coming down, and I believe we're going to see some plotting for the first time in this game. I think it is definitely a debate for Lewis here. He's looking at the resources. He's definitely got at least 1 Sun Frosty. Oh no, but it's 2 Sun Frosty, so we have absolutely ridiculously huge Ahsoka here. So we're getting +6 power on this, so it takes her up to 10 power. Unfortunately, I once again have the Dogmatic Shock Squad, which is not going to deal with the Ahsoka, but it's at least going to slow it down and mean that I'm not going to take 10 damage to base this turn. I will have to end up trading both units if I want to deal with the Ahsoka now. Yeah, here we go. We see the swing in there with the Talon. The -1 does not really make a difference because she's going to die anyway. That unit has 10 power. So Lewis claims initiative. We go into the 7 resource turn with just the 6-powered Devastating Gunship on board. So at this point, my top end starts to level out. So you're either looking to play something 5 cost and something 2 cost, or you're going for that Fleet Interdictor, but there's only a few of those Fleet Interdictors in there. So yeah, Lewis opens us up with tapping full 7 resources, I believe. Yeah, he does indeed. He plays the Grappling Guardian, which is a card that does not often see play, but in this moment, it feels pretty impactful. It is a 7-cost space whale that when played, you may defeat a space unit that has 6 or less HP remaining. So I have the conversation here with Lewis. It is definitely a card that I considered for this deck, this Talon deck, but I did not think that people will be playing enough space to make it worth it. So yeah, you see here I develop a bit more of a board, so I go for the Thralls of the Coven and the Treyarch Acolyte. Basically putting down 8 power on board just to push some ground damage if I can. So into the 8 resource turn here, we both resource, going all the way up to 8. So this is looking like it's going to be quite the grindy match like I considered. So not too sad about putting that Cargo Juggernaut in, but potentially wishing I put more removal in, e.g. that Rivals Fall. So we get an Itinerant Warrior here from Lewis to heal 3 damage to base. So he goes all the way down to 1 damage on base, I think, and also puts down a 4/4 shielded threat. So I'm very much behind in the damage race, and I'm going to struggle to deal with this if I don't have any sort of minus effect. So it's definitely a debate here. I'm considering putting down the Cargo Juggernaut. I can play what I think is a good play here, a Nibble Prowess, but I forget the Nibble Prowess only exhausts something in the same arena. So instead here, I go for the Cargo Juggernaut and heal 4 damage from my base because I control a blue unit in the Treyarch Acolyte. I know I don't have to swing with these units on board first because the force is gone from Lewis's base, so he cannot make a Sentinel this turn. I use my final 2 resources for a Night Sister Warrior, but we see another heirloom lightsaber played in space. So because the whale is non-vehicle, it allows for upgrades to be played. That then gives it Restore 1, so Lewis's base goes down to 2 and mine goes up to 12, despite my heal of 4. So it becomes effectively a 6 damage swing every turn. 5 damage to base and Restore 1 from your own just starts really putting on pressure and making it harder for me to do. So I'm digging here. I really need to find an answer for this space whale, otherwise I'm really going to struggle. I've only got 16 damage on base left, whereas Lewis has a full 26, so I'm very much behind it. So I need to start pumping some damage to base, whilst also having an answer for this. I'm hoping here that my Thralls of the Coven is going to give me that damage to base, because I'm going to be able to swing for 6 a turn, and then use my other little units, like my shielded Cargo Juggernaut, to deal with any ground units played by Lewis. But any other shielded units is going to hurt here. So instead, what we have is a Rebellious Hammerhead, another absolute bomb of a common. So that is the 6 cost 5/7. When played, you may deal damage to a unit equal to the number of cards in your hand. So Lewis had 4, so he was very easily able to deal with my Thralls of the Coven there. I have a Whirlwind of Power here on the Grappling Guardian. That gives it the -3/-3. That only gives it 2 power for this phase, but yeah, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be enough to deal with it outright. I don't have enough left over to deal the remaining damage to that unit. So it is simply just a slow you down, deal a little bit less damage to my base. Because if I'd have done the trade of the Night Sister Warriors here, that would have meant that he would have been able to swing in for that full 5, and then that Whirlwind wouldn't have done anything. So we have the Cargo Juggernaut coming in here, 4 to base, so that takes him up to 6. But that will come very much down to 5 as soon as this Grappling Guardian swings to base. So yeah, we get 2 damage to base, heal 1 from Lewis. With my final card, I have a Fallen Jedi. That's just a 3/4. That is the budget version of the Grand Inquisitor Legendary. And I believe, yeah, so we get the Nimble Prowess onto the Night Sister Warrior to be able to value trade this opposing Night Sister Warrior. Just lets it stick around and live a little longer. So interestingly, I've drawn here into the DRK1 Probe Droid. So you would potentially think Outer Constable is premium upgrade removal in this environment because it's a common as well. However, the DRK1 Probe Droid is very much the same, but it specifies non-unique upgrades. Sorry. In this commons only environment, there are no unique upgrades. So it then becomes the choice of, do you want a 3/1 body or do you want a 2/3 body on the ground? And in my eyes, 2/3 body is always going to be better. So we get a pillage from Lewis here. So I only had 2 cards in hand. A pillage is absolutely brutal here because I know this is my turn. What I've got on board is what I've got on board. I can't deal with the 10 damage in space. So both of these space units are going to be able to swing me here, take me to 26. So as long as I don't have an answer on the following turn, I'm not going to be able to do anything. And then we get another one of those Jedi that comes down that deals 2 damage to my Night Sister Warrior. That allows me to at least draw a card, so whatever card I draw here I can more than likely play. Lewis puts a twin laser turret onto the Rebellious Hammerhead, which I believe gives it the +2 that it needs to kill me here. And yes, the card I drew into was the Trace Acolyte, so absolutely no impact on the board here. And there we go, that is game 2 in the books. So my sideboarding here was definitely wrong. I did not expect the big top-end space units that I should have been. So I believe here I'm going to go back into the sideboard, go dig in, try and find a few more answers. So direct hit's probably going to come in, Rival's Fall's definitely going to come in. I'm going to put that Supremacy Tie back in, just to give me another 3/3 Sentinel that's going to slow him down a bit. Whereas I think Lewis here is happy with his sideboarding, but he's just gonna have another look, make sure that he's fully happy. I consider there putting in the Imperial Squadron just to give me a bit more space, but I think I go for the Corellian Hounds instead. If he goes full space again, and I can still keep dealing with the ground units, a Corellian Hounds is a great punish for that. It's a 5/5 for 5 that comes in ready, and you can just do some serious damage to base. Because effectively, you play it on the 5 resource turn, it comes in ready. By the 6 resource turn, you're doing 10 damage with it. Which when you only have 28 damage, that's a pretty hefty chunk. So here we go, we're cutting decks for game 3. This one is for all the beans, as they would say. So we're going to draw up to 6 here, resource R2, and see how it goes. Because I lost that game, I'm choosing to start with the initiative here, even though the marker begs to differ. So I'm going to go for a mulligan here. I'm not seeing what I want to see. So because I've got the start here, I'm going to be able to, or I'm going to want to play a force unit here that's going to be able to deal with whatever turn 1 play that Lewis is playing. So typically that's going to be a Secretive Sage, just that shielded makes it so much more survivable and gives me an extra unit in the following turns that I can keep swinging with. Night Sister Warrior is okay, but because that's not shielded, all you're doing is you're getting that one swing out of it into a unit, and then you're drawing a card, and that's it. It's not sticking around. Thralls of the Coven, sorry, not Thralls of the Coven, the 2/3 without the Force. That extra health can often mean that it survives, but again, it's not as premium as the Secretive Sage. The only benefit of that is that when it's defeated, it also gains you the Force. So if you don't have the initiative and you think they're just going to trade your initial unit, you can then ship it off and still gain the Force. So unfortunately here, in my mulligan, I don't have a turn 1 play. So my first action of the game is going to be to claim. I'm not too upset about this because I have my 1 copy of Merciless Contest in hand. So Lewis starts off with the Secretive Sage, which again, such a great turn 1 play for all of these Force decks. I now have the choice between the Merciless Contest and the Supremacy Tie. I'm going to hold on to the Supremacy Tie here, I think, and keep that Vanquish in hand as well. Again, super premium removal in this format. I think I'm going to want to go for the Merciless Contest here, just because it means that Lewis is not going to get damage on base, he's not going to gain the Force, and I'm not going to lose a unit either, because I don't have one to lose. It's effectively Power of the Dark Side. And then, even more heartbreakingly for Lewis, no turn 2 play either. So that Merciless Contest, effectively meaning we're starting this game fresh on the 4 resource turn. I don't have the Force though, so if I have something like an Itinerant Warrior here, it's really not going to have the impact you want it to. So we're tapping out here, just like I said, no Force for either of us, so this Itinerant Warrior comes down. Admittedly, no damage on base either, so not the end of the world. It is still a 4/4 shielded. All I have here is the Fallen Jedi, so Lewis instantly off to a better start here with a 4/4 shielded against my 3/4 non-shielded. So if Lewis wants, he can easily answer my unit here and completely switch off my ability to gain the force. So as you see here, I draw into that Towson's Assassin. So if I have a way to gain the force, so potentially with a Towson deploy and swing, I could then follow up with a Towson's Assassin. The other option here, 5 resources, is the Vanquish. So if I feel like it, I could vanquish this Itinerant Warrior, but I don't think that's going to be a very useful use of my options. So here we get the open fire again from Lewis, spending 3 of his resources to deal 4 damage to my Fallen Jedi. That again saves the shield on the Itinerant Warrior and deals with my only way to gain the force straight away. So by the looks of it, I have a Thralls of the Coven, Towson's Assassin, direct hit, and Vanquish in hand. So I've got to decide here whether I want to build board or whether I want to control his. So yeah, here I go for the Towson flip to gain me that force, so I'm still keeping my option open for the Towson's Assassin. Lewis here swings 4 to base and gains the force. So what I can do here is swing to base with the Towson's Assassin, give the -1, sorry, with the Mother Towson, give the -1 to the Itinerant Warrior. That will then give me the force and also a 3/3 body to give that -3/-3/2 from the Towson's Assassin. So I think that's exactly what we're going for here. The way to punish that from Lewis would have been to play some form of upgrade on the Itinerant Warrior, but luckily I had that backup Vanquish in hand, so if he'd have gone full and gone for that lightsaber or whatever he had, I could have just vanquished that unit and not had to worry about it. But instead, we get the Night Sister Warrior with those final 2 resources. Again, just giving another unit that's going to pump a little bit of damage and still gain you a card when you draw. But I'm feeling pretty good here going into the Ahsoka flip turn with 7 power on board and the -1/-1. So it'll be interesting to see here what we get from Lewis. Likely to be a swing from the Night Sister Warrior here whilst it's still alive. We still have another Towson's Assassin here. And at the back of the hand there, you see the Dogmatic Shock Squad once again, which is going to be another great way to just slow down that Ahsoka leader and mean that she's really not having much of an impact on the board. The bonus here that I didn't have in the last game is that if Ahsoka flips, I have more than just the Towson to do that final 2 damage to that Ahsoka leader. I won't have to trade my leader into it if there is something like a Sun Ferocity placed upon it. Because even with 1 Sun Ferocity, that takes Ahsoka up to 8 power, so the -1 from the Towson would still mean that it trades. So here we go, we get Lewis. He's debating where to put the swing, so I think he's debating whether he puts some more damage on Towson just to make it even more likely that the Ahsoka's going to trade if I want to, but instead we get the 2 damage to base here. So I've got to make the decision here. Do I deal with the Towson's Assassin here and deal 4 to base whilst the Night Sister Warrior is not a Sentinel, or do I just get the damage to base and start putting pressure on? I go for the damage to base, and yeah, as you see, we get Night Sister Warrior gets made a Sentinel, so it will at least protect the Ahsoka flip. But typically I wanted to play that Dogmatic Shock Squad after the Ahsoka flip just to get in its way, but here I doubt he's got much of an answer for it in one action. I don't think he's playing Vanquish, so I'm just going to play it out now, leave the Towson up to trade that Ahsoka, and then see how we go. Unfortunately, the Sentinel will get in the way, so I think the Towson will have to just swing into the Night Sister Warrior. But we will at least be able to put a -1 onto the Ahsoka to slow her down a little bit and make it even harder for her to trade that Dogmatic Shock Squad. So we get the -1 here on the Dogmatic, on the Ahsoka, and Lewis draws his card from the when defeated on the Night Sister Warrior. He's at least still got his 6 resources up, so he has plenty of choices of what he could do with those resources. Whereas I'm fully tapped out, all units tapped out, I'm now at his mercy of what he decides to do. We get Restored Arc up in space, so that is the 2/3 Restore 1. Again, some more little space units to fill the curve that I probably wasn't expecting. So I'm happy that I'm keeping that direct hit in hand. We've also got a pillage with those final 4 resources. So unfortunately not a unit for Lewis to develop the board, and I have 4 cards in hand, so I get the choice of what do I want to do with those 4. I have to discard 2 of them. So it's the debate here of what do I expect to see going forward. We lose a direct hit because I know I'm still holding the Vanquish, and then we're going to have to lose 1 other unit. So it's between the Thralls of the Coven and a Towson's Assassin. I think I value the Towson's Assassin more here because of the -3, because it potentially what I can do first action. If Lewis swings in here with the Ahsoka, which he doesn't, I could have -3 and not even had to have traded a unit into it to get the kill. So instead, we go into the 7 resource turn here, with Ahsoka on board and a restored arc for Lewis, and then we have Mother Towson, Towson's Assassin, and Dogmatic Shock Squad for here for me. So it is a total of 11 damage on board for myself and 7 damage on board for Lewis, with 6 damage on on my base and 7 damage on Lewis. So it's a very, very close game here. It's all going to matter how we negotiate these next few turns and who can maintain board presence and deal with our opponents the best. So here we get the Towson's Assassin swinging in 4 to base before Ahsoka makes herself the Sentinel and gets in the way. So we take Lewis here up to 11 damage on base. Definitely have the Force here because we have not used it for a while, so keeping that Towson's Assassin open. The restored arc comes in here, takes me up to 8 and heals the 1, so it's now 8 plays 10. The Shock Squad also gets in, so we go another 4 to base up to 14. Potentially should have done that first because I could have, if Lewis had another one of those Padawan lightsabers, he could have traded the Dogmatic Shock Squad in 1. But here we go, we get the swing from the Ahsoka into the Dogmatic Shock Squad, puts 4 damage on herself and 5 damage onto the Shock Squad. So the Shock Squad alive with 1 health and Ahsoka alive with 2, also giving her the Sentinel trait. So here we go, we get that Towson's Assassin that we made sure to hold on to there. That gives us the -3/-3, gets the Sentinel out the way, as well as developing another unit on board. So yeah. That does leave us with only 2 resources because I did not resource up to 7 based on that pillage. It would have meant I only had the 2 cards in hand, and another pillage would have been pretty brutal. So we get, oh there we go. We get another 4 resources tapped from Lewis there. We are forced to discard 2 cards. So it's the debate of, do I want to spend my 2 resources here for that Treyas Acolyte, or do I want to hold on to my Cargo Juggernaut or my Vanquish. I decide here to keep on to the Vanquish because I'm happy that I have a big board presence on the ground, but again, if he plays another one of those massive spaceships that I can't answer, I'm going to start losing the game pretty quick. So I want to keep hold of that Vanquish and just make sure that I can still develop units. Here we get open fire. So the open fire goes for one of the Towson's Assassins. Again, just takes another 4 damage off the board. So that takes me, I still have my 11 damage on board, plays his 2. So I'm feeling pretty good coming out of this turn. So I've got the choice here. I've got 3 cards in hand. If I want to resource up to 7, I can, but I do not. You never know if he has the 3rd pillage. One of the cards I drew there was the FN Trooper Corps. It's one of in this list. It is the 5-cost 4/5 with plot, and then when you play it, you can give another unit an experience token. If you don't have much choice on the Towson flip, it can be a nice little damage bonus and just put another big 4/5 unit on board. So here we start off with the Dogmatic Shock Squad getting into base, so that takes Lewis up to 21. I've only got to deal 7 more damage here, which is, funnily enough, exactly the amount of damage I am representing. So Lewis has to have an answer for me here. I'm the one providing the question, he's got to be the one providing the answer. So the Guerrilla's attack pod comes in here. This represents quite a scary threat. If he swings that into my Sentinel, he deals 4 damage to that, leaving it with 2 health. That unit has grip and could represent a massive swing here. And I don't want to use any of my units to trade that, so I use that Vanquish that I kept that then puts him in check. He's got the 1 resource left. Townsend comes in here. Unless I've done my maths wrong, which I have. We were only on 19 there, so there we go. We get the handshake anyway. We take him to 27, and there we go. That is round 3 of the Clanker Cup. I have the other 3 rounds filmed, not recorded, but I felt that this was the most interesting round to put out there to show you guys the format. I have 3 games against the Grand Admiral Grand Moff Tarkins. If you guys are interested in seeing those games, including the finals match, please let me know in the comments and I can make another one of these videos demonstrating that. And if not, I hope you've at least enjoyed this match. It was a pretty fun one. Lewis taking me to 3 games. This is the only game of the day that went to 3 games, and I think it was a good representation of the power level that you can make with just some commons and a bit of fun. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm not too up to date with, or not very well practiced on doing this sort of commentary video, so any advice, any thing you'd want to see from us, please let us know, and yeah, we hope to see you again in the future.